Chapter 421. The sun went down and it got dark. David got up and sorted his clothes, ready to go to the banquet. But Sonia was sleeping soundly at this time. David shouted twice. Sonia shook her head. Go on your own, I'm not going, I'm too sleepy, I want to sleep. David looked at Sonia, and finally turned and left. Sonia has a jade pendant to protect her body. If there is danger, David will know as soon as possible. Inside the Regal Hotel. Almost all the people with heads and faces in Zhongcheng have arrived, but Ruben has risen to his status in Zhongcheng because of David. Now even Ji Yu Wenchen and Ling Zhenchuan are all respectful to Ruben. People from other families are even more flattering to Ruben, all of them are full of envy in their eyes, envious that Ruben has a good daughter. Mr. Chen is here. Someone shouted and saw David push the door and walk in. Everyone got up and stood on both sides to greet David. David nodded slightly, greeting everyone, and then sat beside Ruben. Everyone else was also seated with excitement on their faces. To be able to sit and eat with David is something that many wealthy families are looking forward to. Mr. Chen, I heard from Pavilion Master Li that I wanted to invite you into the Dharma Protector Pavilion and gave you the position of Pavilion Master, but you refused. Ji Yu Wenchen was the first to ask David. David smiled lightly. I have too many trivial matters to do. After everyone listened to it, they sighed for a while. The position of the Pavilion Master of the Provincial Capital's Law Enforcement Pavilion was rejected. This is too good. They really know how good David's strength is. You must know that this is the Pavilion Master of the Provincial Capital, bigger than the mayor of Ling Zhenchuan. This is a position that many people dream of. Let's have a good drink today, let's not talk about other things. Ruben knew that David disliked others to ask about him, so he raised a glass of wine and suggested. Yes, only drinking, not talking about things. Ji Yu Wenchen nodded again and again. Soon, the banquet started, everyone chatted lively, but David was faintly worried about Sonia. At this time, outside the Pinerest Villa area, two people wearing black robes and wrapping themselves tightly are walking towards the villa area. The two people just walked past the security guards at the door, and those security guards didn't seem to see it. You must know that such a high-end community will definitely not let strangers enter casually, not to mention wearing strange clothes. You are not a good person at first glance. But there was no security guard to stop these two people and let them walk in through the door. Do you think that something has gone in? Suddenly a security guard asked with a frown. What's there? We haven't seen it with so many eyes, so are you the only one who sees it? Someone refuted the security guard. I don't know, I always feel like someone has entered, and a gust of wind just made me shiver. The security guard looked puzzled. You kid can't see ghosts, right? Ha 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 ha. The other security guards started laughing. The security guard stopped talking, but took the baton in his hand, left the guard box at the gate, and patrolled the villa area. It can be seen that the security guard is doing his due diligence. But when the security guard was carrying a baton and just turned an intersection, he suddenly saw two black figures appear in front of him. Both of them were wrapped in black robes, only their eyes were exposed. Who are you? The security guard was startled and hurriedly asked with a baton. I saw one of the two shadows, and suddenly raised his hand. The security guard's body was sucked over instantly, his neck was directly stuck, and it became difficult to breathe. Chapter 422. The security guard's eyes were wide open, his eyes were full of terror, he struggled desperately, but he couldn't break free at all. Which is David's villa? The black shadow asked with a hoarse voice. Chen, Mr. Chen is at the Hilltop Villa, he. Click. Before the security guard's words were finished, the security guard's neck was directly twisted and he was killed on the spot. Go. After the two shadows finished speaking, the shadows disappeared in an instant, and the next moment two shadows appeared more than 10 meters away. At this time, in the Hilltop Villa, Sonia had already woken up and was a little hungry. She was cooking in the kitchen. The two shadows quietly entered the villa, but Sonia didn't even know it. Sure enough, there is some ability. The entire Pinerest Villa is still full of spiritual energy. One of them took a deep breath and said with a look of enjoyment. The two sat on the sofa unscrupulously. When Sonia prepared the meal and brought it out, she found that there were two more people on the sofa. She was shocked and the plate in her hand fell to the ground. Who are you? How did you get in? Sonia's face was pale, and she asked in horror. The two glanced at Sonia at the same time, with excitement in their eyes. I didn't expect David's little girl to be so handsome. This time our brothers are not in vain, such a handsome chick can't be hurt. No one paid any attention to Sonia. They had already regarded Sonia as their prey. Hearing the conversation between the two, Sonia's face became even more ugly. He knew that the two were here to trouble David. Who the H3LL are you? Don't you know it's illegal to break into a house without permission? Sonia tried her best to calm herself down and continued to ask. Breach of the law. Ha 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 ha, our brothers never knew what breaking the law was. It doesn't matter if I tell you, I am the left guardian of Xuanyu Valley, he is the right guardian, then David killed our people in Xuanyu Valley, we are here to seek revenge, where are the others? The left guard asked. He's not at home. Sonia shook her head, glanced at the bedroom secretly with her eyes, and found that the bedroom door was open, so she was about to run into the bedroom to close the door, and then call David. You don't have to think about escaping, in front of us, no one can escape. The right protector looked at Sonia squintingly and said. Sonia doesn't care about that, as soon as she gritted her teeth, she suddenly ran towards the bedroom. HMPH, the little girl is disobedient, she said that you can't escape. The right guardian snorted coldly, his body instantly reached behind Sonia, and grabbed it towards Sonia. But just when Sonia was about to be caught, the jade pendant that Sonia was wearing suddenly flashed a red light, and the body of the right protector was instantly knocked out. Sonia also ran into the bedroom, locked the door tightly, leaned against the door, and dressed in rough clothes. Spirit protection weapon. The right protector looked at his slightly trembling palm, and his eyes were full of surprise. At the same time, David, who was drinking at the Regal Hotel, suddenly shook his body, and the wine glass in his hand fell to the ground, instantly shattering. Mr. Chen, what's the matter? David, what's going on? Everyone's eyes fell on David, but David didn't have time to explain, the whole body disappeared in place in an instant, then appeared in the window, and jumped down. Everyone was stunned, and hurried over to check it out. It was a dozen floors, and they jumped down when they said they jumped. When everyone looked down through the window, they found that David was no longer there. Immortal, Mr. Chen is really an immortal. Ji Yu Wenshin exclaimed with a shocked expression. Chapter 423. In the Pinerest Villa, Sonia shook her hands and took out her mobile phone to call David, but before the call was dialed, David's call came in. David, he is from Xuanyu Valley. There are 2 people in total. They seem to be very powerful. They are in the living room now. I fled into the bedroom and closed the door. Sonia said anxiously to David. After hearing this, David raised his heart to his throat. For the Xuanyiwegu group, how could a bedroom door stop them? You stay in the bedroom, I'll be there soon. After David finished speaking, he increased the speed to the extreme, and the wind whistled in his ears. In the living room, Xuanyiwegu's left and right guardians did not intend to break the door, but sat on the sofa and talked. This David really has something, and he can actually refine a protective spiritual weapon. If such a person can be used by my Xuanyiwegu, he will definitely become a great weapon. The right protector said with a bit of admiration in his eyes. This son must be arrogant and arrogant, how can he join our Xuanyu Valley, so don't waste your efforts. The left guard shook his head. HMPH, can someone who is arrogant still escape my spirit devouring technique? He will do what I tell him to do then. The right guardian raised his mouth and stretched out his right hand, only to see that the right hand was wrapped in a cloud of black mist. At this moment, David's figure rushed into the villa in an instant. Seeing these 2 guys sitting in the living room and not rushing into the bedroom, David's hanging heart finally let go. Seeing David's appearance, Xuanyiwegu's left and right guardians stood up, looking at David with a bit of surprise in his eyes. Are you David? Right protector asked. They didn't expect David to be so young, and to have such achievements at such an age. If he really joined Xuanyu Valley, he would definitely become an archmage. You are from Xuanyu Valley. David frowned. That's right, we are the right and left guardians of Xuanyu Valley. If you kill our people in Xuanyu Valley, we will definitely not give up, but seeing that you are young and promising, it is not easy to cultivate. If you are willing to join our Xuanyu Valley, I can let go of your life. The right guardian nodded and said. Humph. David snorted coldly, I don't want to be with you guys like you Xuanyiwegu thieves. If you scared my wife today, then leave your life behind. What am I talking about? This guy must be arrogant and arrogant, how could he join our Xuanyu Valley? Stop talking nonsense, just slap him to death. Zuo Hufa said impatiently. Don't worry, leave it to me. The right guardian smiled coldly, and saw that the black mist on his right hand suddenly became thicker and thicker, and then with a flick of his finger, a black mist shot directly towards David. Seeing this situation, David was overjoyed, pretending that he couldn't dodge in time, and directly let the black mist enter his body. When the black mist entered David's body, it was instantly swallowed up by David's Dantian, and then the concentration technique started to refine the black mist. Ha ha ha, boy, you're so arrogant about this skill. You've been hit by my spirit devourer, so you still don't listen to me. Seeing that David did not dodge away, the right protector burst into laughter. And the Guardian Zuo was stunned for a moment. With this little ability, how did you kill the old guy Boohoo and the patrol officer Zuo? Could it be that these two guys were assassinated? Definitely, Boohoo is lustful. As long as he is poisoned by a woman, he doesn't care about anything. Didn't you see how beautiful this David's wife is? Maybe Boohoo, that old guy, was caught in a trap. The right protector said with disdain on his face. That black fog, in David's dantian, was quickly refined, and then David pretended to be surprised to look at the right guardian. What did you just do? It's gone in a flash. Chapter 424. Right protector was stunned for a moment, and looked at David in surprise. Boy, do you still have thoughts now? Why not? David asked. Damn, what's going on? You won't lose your spirit devourer, will you? The left guardian cursed one sentence. Impossible, it must be that my skill is too small. After the right guardian finished speaking, he suddenly waved his palm, and this time a large cloud of black mist directly wrapped David. Soon, the black mist entered David's body, and David's eyes lost their luster, and the whole person became dull. Ha ha ha, see no, this time I succeeded. This kid has good strength and has aura to protect his mind, so he didn't succeed just now. Seeing David like that, the right protector burst out laughing. At this time, in David's body, the black fog desperately wanted to rush into David's head, but unfortunately it was tightly wrapped by David's dantian, and the concentrate heart technique was running fast. Does it work? Try it. Left protector said. Boy, come and give me a shoulder. The right protector waved his hand towards David. David's eyes were blank. He walked slowly towards the right guardian, then stood behind the sofa and pressed his shoulder for the right guardian. See if you can, my spirit devouring technique is not good enough. Right protector said with a proud face. Press me for a while. Zuo Hufa also sat down and leaned his head gently on the sofa. David put his hands on the shoulders of the right guardian, and the condensed heart technique was running. David's hands were like a huge vortex, and began to absorb the spiritual power of the right guardian. The right guardian was lying on the sofa and enjoying, but soon he felt that something was wrong. The spiritual power in his body seemed to be rushing outwards uncontrollably. In the galloping river and sea, the spiritual power began to drain rapidly. The right guardian felt bad. He wanted to get up, but his body couldn't move at all. When he looked up, he found that David was looking at him with a playful expression. His eyes were clear. How could he look like he was being controlled? The right guardian opened his mouth and wanted to shout, but he couldn't make a sound at all, while the left guardian slightly closed his eyes and was ready to enjoy being massaged. Soon, the spiritual power on the right guardian was completely sucked by David, and the whole person turned into a mummified corpse. When he died, his eyes were wide open, and his eyes were full of incredible. Looking at the side with slightly closed eyes, and also thinking about the left guardian who was well massaged, David raised the corner of his mouth, and put a hand directly on the left of the guardian's shoulder. The guardian left's body shook slightly, and his eyes suddenly opened, because he didn't hear the instructions of the guardian right. Why did David come to massage himself? When Hufa Zuo opened his eyes, he saw the mummified corpse next to him. He jumped up from the sofa at once, and his head was about to explode. In the blink of an eye, his partner turned into a mummified corpse, and he didn't even make a cry for help. Hufa Zuo's scalp was numb, his eyes were full of horror, and he looked at David, then turned around and ran out. David's figure flickered, directly blocking Zuo Hufa's path. Since you are here, then don't leave. I just use your resources tonight to cultivate well. Protector Zuo frowned. The black robe on his body suddenly waved. The black robe actually blocked the light, and the figure of Protector Zuo disappeared instantly in the darkness. Will you Xuanwegu use these illusions to deceive people? With a look of disdain, David grabbed into the darkness. After a scream, the guardian Zuo appeared, and the black robe immediately shattered. Protector Zuo was horrified. His mouth was wide open. He wanted to speak, but he couldn't say a word. Chapter 425. The spiritual power in the body was rapidly lost, directly entering David's body, and then being refined by the heart concentration art for his own use. After draining the spiritual energy on the left guardian, David disposed of the body and threw it all into the mountain stream. After tidying up the room, looking at the closed bedroom door, David pushed it forward and found that the door was still locked. Sonia, it's me, it's all right. David knocked on the door and said. Sonia opened the door with panic on her face. After seeing David, she threw herself into David's arms. David patted Sonia's back lightly and comforted her softly. At this time, the jade pendant on Sonia's body has been eclipsed and lost its efficacy. David frowned slightly. He had to find a way to refine a more powerful body protection weapon, otherwise Sonia's safety would not be guaranteed. Now David's weakness is Sonia, and he has been worried about Sonia's safety. At the same time, in the Xuanyu Valley Hall, the valley owner Qian Feng was playing chess with an old man. Suddenly there was a sound in the black pottery pot beside him. Qian Feng opened the pottery pot to check and found that 2 more GU insects were dead. It has been eaten by other GU worms. Looking at me, I really underestimated this guy. Qian Feng frowned. What? The left and right guardians also died? The old man asked. Qian Feng nodded, his face was ugly, and he didn't speak. It seems that some of our old people should go and have a look. After the old man finished speaking, he suddenly waved his sleeves, and the chess pieces in front of him disappeared instantly. The old man turned and left, while Qian Feng's eyes flashed with cold light. In the Pinerest Villa at this time, Sonia had already fallen asleep, holding David's clothes tightly with one hand. She could see that she was very scared, afraid that David would leave. Seeing Sonia like that, David sighed softly, his eyes full of pity. If it wasn't for him, Sonia would not have been so frightened. Closing his eyes slightly, David began to refine and absorb the spiritual power of Xuanyuegu's left and right guardians. On top of David's head, the faint white mists turned into vortexes, moving towards David's body. It's pouring in quickly. The next morning, Chifeng sent a message saying that the money had been transferred to the Yaowangfu, and now it was waiting for the Yaowangfu to deliver it. David didn't reply either. He planned to use these few days to accompany Sonia well and let her slowly come out of her fear. At the same time, after receiving the money from Chifeng, the housekeeper Lao Chu immediately found the mansion owner Sun Simiao. Palace Master, the money has already been sent, can we still deliver it? Lao Chu asked. Of course, it must be distributed, and not a single herb can be distributed less. Sun Simiao said. Palace Master, why? Then Zhang Zhang is already dead. All this money was traded with us by Chifeng under the guise of the Zhang family. Why do we have to ship them to them? Then Chifeng has no backer in Kyoto. Lao Chu said with a puzzled look. Although Chifeng has no backers in the capital, there is still a capable man standing behind him. He was just in his early 20s, and he could kill Zhang Zhang, and even the old dude in Xuanyu Valley. Isn't it a genius? The corner of Sun Simiao's mouth slightly raised. Palace Master is talking about the one named David. I heard that the reason why he was able to kill Zhang Zhang was entirely because Zhang Zhang was exhausted after fighting Sun Yaobang and Chifeng, and David took advantage of it. Lao Chu said with some disdain, he was just in his early 20s, even if he cultivated from his mother's womb, he would not be able to reach the level of an internal force master. What about Xuanyuegu's doubt? And not long ago, a left patrol sent by Xuanyuegu was also killed by this David. Remember, the enemy of the enemy is a friend. We will follow Xuanyuegu sooner or later. Zan, now that David has formed a deadly feud with Xuanyuegu, then we will draw him over. This is a rare genius. Sun Simiao became more and more excited as he spoke, his eyes flashing with light. Chapter 426. Why is this kid so powerful? Lao Chu looked a little surprised. Palace Master intends to pull this David into our Medicine King's mansion. That's right, our Yaowang mansion needs such talents. Sun Simiao nodded. But David killed Zhang Zhang. Didn't you say that the Zhang family has a backer in Kyoto? If the backer of the Zhang family finds trouble with David, what should we do? Lao Chu was very puzzled. It was an eventful time, why did Sun Simiao still want to win over him? Haha, old Chu, then there is Zhang Zhang in the Zhang family's capital, and don't you know that our Yaowang's mansion is the backer of the capital? Do you think I will be afraid? Sun Simiao laughed out loud. Old Chu nodded again and again. That's right, which family in Kyoto can compete with the Bai family? Go ahead, the martial arts gathering is about to start, and this year, we need to increase the rewards, and the trade street will be renovated as soon as possible. Only when our reputation here becomes more and more popular, there will be more and more precious medicinal materials. Hebao is going here. Sun Simiao waved his hand and said. Got it. Lao Chu withdrew. Just after Lao Chu left, a 27 or 8-year-old young man walked out from the back of the hall. The young man was well dressed and looked extraordinary at first glance. Second young master. Sun Simiao hurriedly stood up and bowed slightly towards the young man. The person who can make the palace master of Yaowang Mansion so respectful is definitely not an ordinary person. This person is Bai Zontang, the second young master of the Bai family in Kyoto. Although this Bai Zontang is only 27 or 88, his strength has already reached the master of Neijin, and now he is the 6th grade master is stronger than the Zhang Zhang. The reason why Bai Zontang was able to have this strength at such a young age was inseparable from the Medicine King's mansion. Every year, the Medicine King's mansion would pay tribute to the Bai family with a large amount of medicinal pills to assist the children of the Bai family in their practice. Palace Master Sun, don't be so polite, sit down. Although Bai Zontang is the second young master of the Bai family in Kyoto, and his strength is so strong, he is introverted. Second young master, this year's martial arts gathering, you came in person, is there something wrong? After Sun Simiao sat down, he asked Bai Zontang carefully. Yeah. Bai Zontang nodded. My Bai family has lost a spiritual tool. This spiritual tool can nourish the body and turn bad luck into good luck, so I came here to see if this spiritual tool will be available this time. Appeared at a martial arts party. After Sun Simiao heard this, he was surprised. Second young master, is there anyone in this world who can steal from the Bai family? Bai Zontang smiled awkwardly. Don't ask any more questions, a few servants of my Bai family will come later, you just need to receive them well. Besides, the news of my coming here must not be revealed. Second young master, don't worry, I will never reveal it. Sun Simiao nodded. As the martial arts gathering approached, people began to arrive in Tianfeng town ahead of schedule. A small town with only 10,000 people began to become lively at this time. David and Sonia accompanied Ruben in Horrendal for a few days, and then returned to the provincial capital. At first, David wanted Sonia to stay in Horrendal, but when Xuaniwegu left and right to protect the law, David did not dare to let Sonia leave her side for half a step. In the afternoon, Lin Tianyu drove David and Sonia to the provincial capital. You two are finally back, I've been waiting here for days. Seeing David and Sonia come back, Ji Linger hurriedly said. Linger, what are you waiting for? Why didn't you go to work? Seeing Ji Linger waiting for them, Sonia asked strangely. David was also puzzled. What happened? I quit my job and don't go to work. Ji Linger said. Chapter 427. Resign. David and Sonia all looked at Ji Linger in surprise. They all know that Ji Linger's ideal is to be a detective, and then eliminate violence and Liang. How do you say you quit your job? Why did you resign? Sonia asked in surprise. I want to become stronger. Only when I am strong can I punish the strong and help the weak, so I want to worship David as my teacher. Ji Linger looked at David firmly and said. During this period of time, Ji Linger was deeply affected. In the face of her absolute strength, even if she was a member of the Dharma Protector Pavilion, she was not intimidated at all. This prompted Ji Linger to resign and make herself stronger. Ji Linger's words almost prevented David from falling. Sonia covered her mouth and smiled. Linger, why are you crazy? If you take David as your teacher, what will you call me? Do you want to call me my wife? Go, who called your wife? The two of you are not married yet, so you are not ashamed to say that. Ji Linger rolled her eyes at Sonia, then looked at David and said, David, I want to worship you as my teacher, you teach me Kung Fu. I don't accept apprentices. David shook his head. If you don't accept it, I will follow you. I will go wherever you go. Ji Linger grabbed David's arm, and it seemed that he was going to rely on David. David looked at Ji Linger like that, and looked at Sonia helplessly. He wanted Sonia to help him persuade him. Sonia smiled. I can't help you, if you can't, just compromise. David sighed. I can teach you, but I can't be your master, I can give you some pointers occasionally. David reluctantly made a compromise. Okay, you just need to teach me. Ji Linger smiled, then dragged Sonia and ran away, saying as she ran, Sonia, I'll take you to see my new foundation, it's amazing. Looking at the backs of the two, David smiled slightly. Mr. Chen, Chifeng has brought all the medicinal materials here. Lin Tianyu came over and said to David. David nodded and followed Lin Tianyu into the room. This is a separate room that David specially sent to clean up, ready for alchemy. Seeing David coming, Chifeng immediately stepped forward and said, Mr. Chen, I have all the medicinal materials from the Yaowangfu, and the Yaowangfu has given some more. It seems that they don't know that Zhang Zhengzhong is dead. David glanced at the medicinal herbs on the ground, all of them were top-quality medicinal herbs with more than 100 years of age, rich and pure spiritual energy. No, they must have known it already. David looked at the herbs and smiled lightly. If it was said that when Zhang Zhengzhong was killed at the beginning, the Yaowangfu did not get the news so quickly, but now more than 10 days have passed, it is impossible for the Yaowangfu to not know. If such a big thing happened, the Yaowangfu would not know. Then they can't do it on this scale. Then why did the Yaowang mansion know about it and still trade with us? I always sent someone to pretend to be someone from the Zhang family to talk about it. Kai Feng said with a puzzled face. I don't know about this, maybe they have other plans. David also couldn't figure out what medicine was sold in the gourd of the medicine palace, and then David continued, since the medicinal materials have been delivered, we will accept them. I just made some medicinal pills for you too, so that your strength can be improved. Thank you, Mr. Chen. Chifeng and Lin Tianyu all said excitedly. Especially Lin Tianyu, coming to the provincial capital has touched him a lot, and he always wants to improve his strength. If he can reach the realm of the Master of Inner Strength one day, then his life will not be in vain. David asked Lin Tianyu and Chifeng to guard outside, while he sat cross-legged and refined more than a dozen medicinal herbs from the billions of medicinal materials in front of him. Chapter 428. David did not stay by himself, but gave it all to Chifeng and Lin Tianyu. Lin Tianyu gave more, after all, Lin Tianyu's strength was too low. The two of them looked at the pills in their hands with excitement and gratitude in their eyes. They knew the value of these pills. They were made from billions of medicinal materials, and David gave them all. Lin Tianyu, you take the Xiaohuan Dan prescription to buy some medicinal materials, I'm going to practice some Xiaohuan Dan. David ordered to Lin Tianyu. Okay. Lin Tianyu nodded and followed Chifeng away. David intends to practice some small repayment pills, and wait for the martial arts gathering to prepare for emergencies. He has no money on him now. If he sees something he likes at the martial arts gathering, he can exchange it with small repaying pills. In the evening, Ji Yulinger called David and Sonia and planned to invite them out to dinner. After all, David promised to teach her kung fu, and Ji Yulinger should also express it. Tell me, what do you want to eat? Don't save me money. Ji Yulinger asked David and Sonia. What kind of food is there in the provincial capital? You know best, how do we know? Sonia said. That's good, I'll take you to eat teppanyaki, I know there is a good one. Ji Yulinger said and opened the door. But just when Ji Yulinger was about to get into the car, the phone suddenly rang. It was from the family who called Ji Yulinger, saying that there was something to do, and she wanted Ji Yulinger to go home for dinner. Ji Yulinger suddenly looked embarrassed, while Sonia smiled slightly. It's okay, you can go home and eat, we too can find a place to eat. Why don't you guys come home to eat with me? It just so happens that my parents want to see David too. Ji Yulinger said. Your parents want to see David? Sonia was taken aback. Ji Yulinger suddenly felt that he had said something wrong, and immediately blushed and explained, it's all that ancient style, talking about how powerful David is at home all day long, so my parents are very curious. This is not good. David was a little embarrassed. What's wrong with this? Get in the car. Ji Yulinger pushed Sonia and David into the car and drove straight to her home. Ji Yulinger's parents are also important officials in the provincial capital, but they live in a very ordinary community. The house with 3 bedrooms and 2 halls is quite spacious. At this time, downstairs, a Rolls-Royce Phantom was parked in the community, which seemed out of tune with the community. Whose luxury car is this parked here? It's still the license plate of Kyoto. Ji Yulinger muttered. David and Sonia followed behind Ji Yulinger with gifts in their hands. After all, the first time I went to Ji Yulinger's house, I couldn't go empty-handed. When Ji Yulinger opened the door, she found that there were 2 more people in the house, and the atmosphere in the house was a little depressing. David and Sonia followed, and immediately felt that the atmosphere was wrong. David looked at a young man sitting on the sofa. The energy fluctuations in the young man's body had reached the strength of the master of internal energy, and even surpassed that Zhang. And behind the young man, there was a tall middle-aged man with a majestic face. The aura of the middle-aged man was even stronger, even surpassing that of the young man. These 2 people were placed in the provincial capital, and they are both first-class masters. Now David finally understands why Wu Lui sent his son out. It seems that this martial arts world is really heaven. The young man also seemed to sense the breath of David, raised his eyes to look at David, but quickly withdrew his gaze. Dad, Mom, what is he doing here? Ji Yulinger looked at the young man sitting on the sofa and asked her parents angrily. Chapter 429. Linger, of course I'm here to see you. Although the 2 of us have broken off our marriage, we can still be together now that you are not married and I am not married. The young man got up, looked at Ji Yulinger with a smile and said. Qin Feng, you're dead. Even if I live forever, I won't marry you. Wasn't the me that you humiliated enough? Why didn't you go to your Miss Bai? Did you get dumped? Ji Yulinger looked at Qin Feng with disdain. Qin Feng was not angry either, and smiled lightly. Linger, in fact, I still like you. I dumped Bai Manly a long time ago. This time I made a special trip to find you. As Qin Feng said, he actually grabbed Ji Yulinger on his body. Ji Yulinger wanted to dodge, but found that Qin Feng was so fast that Ji Yulinger couldn't dodge at all. Ji Yu Linger's hand was grabbed by Qin Feng, her whole face became extremely ugly, and she struggled desperately. Qin Feng, you ba 5-tard, let go of your hand. Seeing this, Ji Yu Linger's parents were about to speak, but the middle-aged man behind Qin Feng glanced at them. This glance was filled with endless coercion, which directly made Ji Yu Linger's parents take a few steps back, and their expressions changed. Very ugly. Who are you? Let go of Linger, aren't you a hooligan? Seeing this, Sonia yelled at Qin Feng angrily. Seeing this, the middle-aged man suddenly burst out with energy, and a terrifying aura pressed towards Sonia. Humph. David snorted coldly and pulled Sonia directly behind him. His body's spiritual power exploded in an instant, directly meeting the energy of the middle-aged man. An overwhelming force was oppressed, causing the middle-aged man to take a few steps back, and only then did he stabilize his figure. Then David stepped forward, directly clasping Qin Feng's wrist, and abruptly broke Qin Feng's hand. For girls, it's better to show some respect. David's voice was extremely cold, and his eyes were fixed on Qin Feng. When the middle-aged man saw this, his eyes burst out with killing intent. Zhongbei provincial capital still has such young talents, it's really insightful. Saying that, the middle-aged man clenched his fists with both hands and was about to smash David with a punch. Ada, stop. Qin Feng said. The middle-aged man could only close his fists. Qin Feng, on the other hand, looked at David with hostility in his eyes and said, Who are you, Ji Yu Linger? Friend. David let go of Qin Feng and said lightly. Qin Feng glanced at David, put away his hostility and said, I'm here to do business, not to fight. I'll have a good fight with you if I have a chance. After Qin Feng finished speaking, he turned to look at Ji Yu Linger's father and said, Uncle, what I told you just now, I hope you will consider it carefully. As long as you help me find someone, I promise to use all the connections of the Qin family to bring you down. Transfer to Kyoto to work. I will consider it, said Ji Yu Linger's father. Qin Feng nodded with satisfaction and left with the middle-aged man. Dad, who did Qin Feng ask you to find? Isn't it enough for our family to be humiliated? Are you still helping him? Qin Feng walked back, and Ji Yu Linger asked her father loudly. Ji Yu Linger's father took out a photo of the girl. He asked me to find this girl, saying that she might have come to the provincial capital, and wanted me to initiate the relationship of the provincial capital to find it, and it was no big deal. You should reject him on the spot. What else are you thinking about? I think you just want to go to Kyoto to become an official. Ji Yu Linger roared angrily, then turned around and ran out of the house. David and Sonia looked embarrassed. They could only put things down and hurriedly chased out. In the car, Ji Yu Linger was in tears with a look of grievance. Sonia comforted softly, Linger, who is that man? Why did you break off the marriage with you? Chapter 430. Ji Yu Linger wiped away her tears, and then slowly began to speak. It turned out that when Ji Yu Wenshin was still a high-ranking official in the provincial capital, he had a good relationship with the Qin family in Kyoto. At that time, the Qin family was still a small family. Later, under the network of Ji Yu Wenshin, the Qin family grew little by little. After Ji Yu Linger graduated from university, with the help of Ji Yu Wenshin, he got engaged with Qin Feng of the Qin family. At that time, Ji Yu Linger saw that Qin Feng was handsome and powerful, so he liked it very much. However, the good times did not last long. After Ji Yu Wenshin retired, Qin Feng broke off the marriage with Ji Yu Linger, and proposed marriage to Bai Manli of the Bai family in Kyoto in public. Great, since then the relationship between the two families has been broken. This Qin Feng is simply inferior to a beast. Sonia gnashed her teeth angrily after hearing this. David was driving the car in front, and he could only sigh slightly. As the saying goes, people take tea to cool off. In this Qin family, it can be said that the performance is incisively and vividly, but in today's society, such people are not rare. After finding a place to eat, David went back. Sonia and Ji Yu Linger slept together to comfort her, and David used the night time to refine some small return pills. Early the next morning, Wu Shi of the Wu family came to the door. Mr. Chen, if we are attending the martial arts gathering, we will be leaving today. I'm afraid we'll be late, and we won't even have a place to stay. Wu Shi respectfully followed David and said, Okay, wait a moment, I'll explain it. David nodded, explained that Lin Tianyu and Chifeng were optimistic about Sonia, and then rushed to Tianfeng town with Wu Shi. Tianfeng town used to be a barren town, but because of the construction of Yaowang Mansion and the annual martial arts gathering, Tianfeng town became prosperous. The medical halls, hotels, and traffic that can be seen everywhere are very lively, much more prosperous than some third and fourth tier small cities. Mr. Chen, I have already booked the hotel in advance, but the scale of the hotel here is incomparable with the provincial capital. Mr. Chen, please feel wronged. Wu Shi took David to a small hotel and stopped. It doesn't matter. David didn't have any requirements for where he lived. David entered the hotel with Wu Shi, and glanced at it casually, and found that there were quite a few masters of internal energy in the hotel lobby, including some masters of internal energy. When Wu Shi passed the hall, many people greeted him, which shows that there are many acquaintances in Wu Shi. On the third floor, Wu Shi took David to the room closest to the corridor and said, Mr. Chen, this is the best room in the hotel, so you can feel wronged. David walked into the room. The whole room is not big, only a dozen square meters, a bed and a bathroom, although the area is not large and a bit crude, but the sanitation is very clean and the environment is not bad. You can see it when you open the window to the only street in Tianfeng town. Junior brother Wu Shi, is the room ready? At this moment, several people walked towards David and Wu Shi. The first was an old man who looked in his 70s or 80s. His whole body was thin and blue veins appeared on his body, like a mummified corpse. Behind the old man followed two young men. One of them was tall and full of masculinity, while the other was much thinner, but his eyes were captivating, and his aura was always permeating his body. Like a rooster that is ready to fight at any time, full of arrogance. It was the tall young man who followed Wu Shi, who was looking at Wu Shi with a smile. Chapter 431. Master, two brothers, you are here. Seeing this, Wu Shi hurried up to meet him. There were also many people in the corridor, and they greeted the old man after seeing the old man. The old man nodded slightly as a return gift. There was no smile on his face, and he looked a little arrogant. Master, let me introduce to you, this is Mr. Chen. Wu Shi hurriedly followed the old man to introduce David. David smiled slightly, nodded towards the old man and said hello, but the old man just glanced at David, but did not respond, and then said to Wu Shi, you are my Baji now. A disciple of boxing, who represents my Bajiquan face outside, how can I call anyone Mr.? When Wu Shi heard this, Zhang Ko quickly explained, Master, no, it's Chen. Junior brother Wu Shi, what master taught you is very right. You will represent my Bajiquan in the future. You must have a bit of backbone. At this martial arts gathering, Master hopes that you can win the championship. Don't embarrass me in Bajiquan, said the thin young man. Senior brother, this time, Mr. Chen is also participating in the martial arts gathering. I am afraid that there is no one else's share for this champion. Wu Shi said embarrassedly. David's strength, Wu Shi has seen with his own eyes. If David comes to power, the champion will be David. Wu Shi, are you scared? The old man frowned slightly. I tell you, this time you have to win the championship for me, otherwise don't blame the teacher for expelling you from the door. The old man snorted coldly, ignored Wu Shi, and walked directly to the room at the end of the corridor. The thin young man followed behind the old man, and when he passed by David, a burst of coercion suddenly erupted towards David. Press it. David smiled coldly, didn't move, didn't even break out his breath to resist, let the coercion strike, his expression didn't change in the slightest. Seeing that David was unresponsive, the thin young man frowned slightly, but instead of testing David, he followed the old man into the room. The tall young man smiled at Wu Shi. Junior brother Wu Shi, don't be nervous, master is just like this, you just need to work hard. With your current strength, there is still a good chance of winning the championship. After patting Wu Shi on the shoulder, the tall young man also followed. Master. Wu Shi was shocked when he saw the old man walking into the room at the end of the corridor, and hurriedly wanted to catch up, because this room was prepared for David. David reached out to stop Wu Shi and shook his head slightly. He understands what Wu Shi means, but for his own sake, let Wu Shi be reprimanded by his master, and David doesn't want that. After all, he has no requirements for where he lives. Mr. Chen, I'm really sorry. Wu Shi said with a look of embarrassment. Wu Shi could only rearrange the room for David next door, and then introduced the situation of several people to David. Through Wu Zai's introduction, David knew that the old man's name was Gao Beisheng, the current owner of the Bajiquan Gym, and the tall young man was called Huo Lion, and the thin young man was called Huo Shan. It belongs to a village and has been worshipped by Gao Beisheng since he was a child. After chatting with David for a while, Wu Shi went to the next room, and soon there was a quarrel in the next room. David's hearing is already different from ordinary people, so he can hear the voice next door clearly. Junior brother Wu Shi, don't make the old master angry, that kid looks ordinary, why are you so afraid? You are scared before you fight, is this still the style of my Bajiquan disciple? Huo Shan said sharply. Chapter 432. Senior brother, Mr. Chen's strength has already reached that of the master of internal strength, and I am not his opponent at all. Wu Shi lowered his voice and said, probably because he was afraid that David next door would hear it. Master Shish. Do you think Master Ne Jin is so easy to achieve? Don't be fooled, you don't know it yet, I think that kid just wants to win the championship and deliberately fools you. Huo Shan spat fiercely. Senior brother, it's true, Mr. Chen, he. Okay, get out of here, I'm going to rest. Before Wu Zai's words were finished, Gao Yusheng shouted angrily and let everyone go out. David next door smiled coldly, standing at the window, looking at the busy traffic on the road outside the window. Among the seemingly ordinary people in a hurry, there are hidden strengths everywhere. Today's Tianfeng town, I am afraid that the entire Jiangnan and Zhongbei are strong within. It's time for the most. When it got dark, Wu Shi knocked on the door and asked David to go to the hall for dinner. Because it was full of people, there were no boxes available at all. David and the others could only choose a table to eat in the corner of the hall. At this time, it was a blessing to have a table to eat, and many people were waiting in line at the back. Wu Shi was busy, preparing tableware for David and Gao Yusheng, and then ordering and serving. David has been sitting still, which makes Wu Zai's master and two senior brothers look unhappy. Junior brother, you are not a waiter, sit down and wait for me. Huo Shan said to Wu Shi coldly. Brother, it will be ready soon. Wu Shi said, took some napkins and put them next to David. Mr. Chen, the napkins are here for you. David nodded. Sit down, don't be busy, just wait a little longer. Wu Shi sat next to David, and soon the food came to the table, and everyone began to eat. There are a lot of people in the hall, and they are all martial arts practitioners, so the voices are loud. Have you heard that there is a young master in Zhongbei, who was in his 20s and killed the head of the Zhong family in public? I've heard it for a long time, but Zhong Zhongjong was killed by the young man after his internal strength was exhausted after 2 battles. This is considered a bargain. Anyway, I really don't want to meet him at this year's martial arts gathering, or else I will add another strong enemy. All the discussions of the crowd reached David's ears, but David just acted as if he hadn't heard it. Wu Shi, your home is in the provincial capital, have you heard about it? Gao Yusheng asked Wu Shi. Of course Wu Shi knew about it, and the person involved was in front of him, but when Wu Shi was about to say it, he saw David winking at him, so Wu Shi said, I heard, it seems that there is such a thing. HMPH, that Zhong Zhongjong, who boasted of high strength, died tragically at the hands of a young man, but I don't believe that person could really kill Zhong Zhongjong. He must have taken advantage of it and took advantage of the emptiness of others. Huo Shan snorted coldly. Zhong Zhongjong is also a hero, and he died like this. Gao Beisheng shook his head slightly. David lowered his head and ate, ignoring a few people talking about him. Then Huo Shan saw that David only lowered his head to eat, and the dishes were taken away by him, and immediately became furious. Just when David was about to take the dishes again, Huo Shan suddenly blocked David with his chopsticks. David was stunned for a moment, but he ignored it and wanted to pick other dishes, but Huo Shan refused to let him go. Whichever one David picked, he would block it. Master, what are you doing? When Wu Shi saw this, his face was startled, and he hurriedly faced Huo Shandao. Chapter 433. It's nothing, the younger brother said that this guy is a master, I want to ask for 2 tricks. Huo Shan looked at David displeasedly. He has long been disgusted by David's sophisticated look. Senior brother, Mr. Chen He. You're not worthy. David put down his chopsticks and said lightly. After speaking, David got up and walked upstairs without eating. Boy, what did you say? Huo Shan jumped up and wanted to chase after David. But he was grabbed by Wu Shi, and then Wu Shi chased after David. Back in the room, Wu Shi kept following David to apologize. Mr. Chen, my brother is irritable, I hope you have a lot of. But just as Wu Shi was talking, Huo Shan had already rushed in, and Gao Beisheng followed Huo Donglai behind him. Boy, you have the ability to repeat what you just said. Huo Shan roared at David. Senior brother, senior brother. Seeing this, Wu Shi hurriedly stopped Huo Shan to prevent Huo Shan from conflicting with David. Junior brother, don't stop me, I have to teach this kid a good lesson today. The tyrannical aura on Huo Shan has begun to erupt. Senior brother, Mr. Chen is the one who killed Zhong Zhongjong, you are not his opponent at all. Seeing this, Wu Shi could only tell the truth about David's identity, otherwise Huo Shan would not give up at all. Sure enough, when Wu Shi said this, Huo Shan instantly became quiet and looked at David in disbelief. It's no wonder that you dare to speak up. It turns out that after killing Zhong Zhongjong, he claims to be invincible in the world and ignores anyone. Haven't you heard that the more you practice martial arts, the more you should keep a low profile? Gao Yusheng said coldly. Even if he can kill Zhang Zhengzhang, I will give it a try today to see if I am worthy of fighting with him. Huo Shan saw that his master had said so, and his anger suddenly rushed up again. Wu Shi wanted to stop him, but was reprimanded by Gao Beisheng. Wu Shi, you are not allowed to stop, otherwise don't blame the teacher for not recognizing you. When Wu Shi heard this, he could only sigh and step aside. Boy, do it. Huo Shan shouted at David without Wu Zai's obstruction. I said, you're not worthy. David said calmly. David broke through Qi training and stepped into the foundation building stage. Even the master of internal energy is like an ant in his eyes, not to mention the level of master of Jin in this area of Huo Shan. Court death. Huo Shan roared suddenly and swung a punch at David. Huo Shan exerted all his strength, the wind howled, and the sound of breaking the sky suddenly sounded. David sneered, took a step forward lightly, and then slapped the Huoshan with a slap. That random slap was like driving away mosquitoes. Snapped. A crisp voice sounded. Huo Shan's fist hadn't reached David's yet, but he was slapped firmly on the face, half of his face swelled up instantly, and a few teeth fell off. This time, Huo Shan was stunned, and even that Gao Beisheng was stunned for a moment, with incredible in his eyes. This slap is just to teach you a lesson. If you dare to be disrespectful, I will not spare you. David said coldly. Ah, I fought with you. Huo Shan roared, he had never been so humiliated before. With a fierce punch, it smashed towards David fiercely. This is to kill David. Seeing this, Wu Shi immediately wanted to block, but it was too late. Huo Shan's fist had already reached David. Tiny. David's face turned cold, and he patted it out. Crack. A crisp sound. Huo Shan's arm suddenly became strangely bent and broke directly, and his whole body was slapped on the ground by David, and he knelt directly in front of David. Chapter 434. It's said that you're not worthy, but you don't believe it. David said lightly. This time, everyone was shocked, and Huo Lion opened his mouth in shock, enough to put an egg in. At first David said this, he only thought that David was pretending, but looking at Huo Shan whose arm was broken, he finally realized that David's disdainful words were not pretending, but had real strength. Boy, you dare to hurt my apprentice, even if you can kill that Zhang Zhengzhang, what can you do? Since my apprentice is not worthy, then let me, my master, come and learn. Gao Beisheng was instantly furious when he saw his apprentice's miserable state. David just glanced at Gao Beisheng coldly, you don't deserve it either. What? You are too arrogant. In Gao Beisheng's eyes, killing intent rose up. Seeing this, Wu Shi hurriedly stepped forward to help Huo Shan up, and then begged to David, I beg Mr. Chen to look at my face, don't get angry. If I didn't look at your face, it wouldn't be as simple as breaking an arm. David's eyes were indifferent. Thank you, Mr. Chen, thank you, Mr. Chen. Wu Shi thanked him repeatedly, helped Huo Shan back behind Gao Beisheng, and said to Gao Beisheng, Master, don't be angry, Mr. Chen, Get out of my way. Gao Yusheng heard Wu Zai's words, yelled Wu Shi aside, and then looked at David coldly, you hurt my disciple's hand, I want you to use both hands. Waste. If you have that ability, you can try it. David looked at Gao Beisheng indifferently, and when Gao Beisheng was looked at by David, he couldn't help shivering. Such indifferent eyes, as if the person in front of him is like an ant, disdained to have the slightest emotion. Good, good, good. Gao Beisheng said 3 good words in a row, and his aura suddenly exploded. There was a gust of wind in the whole room, and things like bedding were swept up by the gust of wind. But just as Gao Yusheng's aura erupted, a soft wind suddenly blew up, like a spring breeze blowing his face, directly suppressing Gao Yusheng's aura. If you want to do it, do it. I have to live in the room, don't mess it up for me. David looked at Gao Yusheng with a casual look, but he didn't take Gao Yusheng seriously at all. A flash of shock flashed in Gao Beisheng's eyes, but the matter had come to this point, and in front of his apprentice, he had no choice but to take action. Drink. Gao Beisheng shouted loudly and swung a punch at David. David lifted it up and grabbed the fist of Gao Beisheng directly, and Gao Beisheng's figure came to an abrupt stop. How is this possible? Gao Beisheng's eyes were full of horror, and he looked at David in disbelief. His punch, to say the least, had thousands of pounds of strength, but David caught it so easily, and Gao Beisheng felt that his fist was in pain as if it were about to split. He wanted to break free, but he couldn't move at all, the whole person seemed to be immobilized. David gave it away, and Gao Beisheng's body stepped back a few steps. If Wu Shi and Huo Lion hadn't hurried to support him, Gao Beisheng would have been sitting on the ground. As I said, you are not worthy to fight with me. Today, for the sake of your being Wu Shi's master, I will spare your life. If you dare to provoke me, I will definitely kill you. David said indifferently with an indifferent expression. At this moment, Gao Yusheng's face was ashen, and he finally understood that David's indifferent eyes were not pretending, but in his eyes, he was really like an ant. Gao Beisheng's complexion changed, and finally he sighed helplessly. We have no eyes and we offended Mr. Chen. Gao Yusheng's title changed. After bowing deeply to David, he turned around and walked out. Chapter 435. Wu Shi hurriedly followed him out. At this time, Gao Beisheng seemed to have aged a lot in an instant, and said to Wu Shi, please invite Mr. Chen to my room, I don't deserve to live in such a room. Wu Shi nodded, returned to David's room, and followed David to tell Gao Beisheng's words. David did not refuse, and stayed in the room at the end of the corridor. It's getting darker and darker, and the streets outside are flashing with neon lights. It's so lively. Wu Shi, you accompany me out for a walk, I'll see if there's anything good. David said to Wu Shi. Okay, I'll take Mr. Chen to the trading street to see it. It's all set up temporarily, in order to facilitate the warriors from all over the world to trade the treasures in their hands. Wu Shi nodded. Soon, Wu Shi took David to the trading street. There was a lot of people here. There were medicinal herbs, some jade pendants, furnace cauldrons and other things, as well as weapons such as swords and knives. Everything. David turned around and found that they were all ordinary things, with a bit of disappointment on his face. He originally wanted to find a better spirit tool here to help Sonia refine a body protection spirit tool. Wu Shi saw David's disappointment, so he said, Mr. Chen, the good things here are usually taken away by the Yaowang Mansion. Where will they be circulated here? This is the reason why the Yaowang Mansion holds this martial arts party. David nodded, remembering that he still had the refined Xiaohuan Dan, so he said to Wu Shi, if I want to sell things here, do I need any procedures? No need, just find an empty place to set up a stall. Wu Shi shook his head. Does Mr. Chen have something to sell? Well, I have some medicinal pills in my hand, and I want to sell them. David said, found an empty place, and then took out Xiaohuandan. Wu Shi looked at the dark elixir in David's hand, and asked with a little doubt, Mr. Chen, what's the name of your elixir? Little Wandan. David said lightly. Oh. Wu Shi had never heard of it, so he could only sigh. However, David's sentence of Xiaohuandan was heard by a servant of the Yaowang Mansion who passed by. After hearing the 3 words of Xiaohuandan, the servant of the Yaowang Mansion gave David a subconscious look, and then hurriedly said left. Soon, Lao Chu, the steward of Yaowang's mansion, hurried over with the servants of Yaowang's mansion. Sun Simiao was asking Lao Chu to inquire about Xiaohuandan, but because he was busy with martial arts gatherings, Lao Chu had no time to go to Yuncheng and Horindal to investigate. Bring people over here. Lao Chu glanced at David, and then asked, this little brother, what's the name of your medicine pill? Little Wandan. David said truthfully. Lao Chu didn't speak, but gently picked up the medicinal pill, smelled it lightly, and then crushed the medicinal pill and put it in his mouth to taste it. Seeing this, David frowned. You didn't say whether to buy or not, but you crushed my medicinal pill. At this time, Wu Shi hurriedly leaned into David's ear. Mr. Chen, this is the steward of the Yaowang Mansion. It is possible that he bought all your medicinal pills. When David heard it, he immediately understood, and then nodded. After Lao Chu tasted it, his eyes suddenly gleamed. Little brother, how much is your small repayment pill? 2 million. David said lightly. Okay, I'll have it all. Lao Chu said cheerfully, then ordered someone to count the amount, and continued to ask David, I want to ask my little brother, who made your medicine pill? I made it myself. David said. You made it. Lao Chu looked at David in surprise, his eyes full of incredible. Chapter 436. Seeing that Lao Chu didn't believe it, David didn't bother to explain. After counting the amount, transfer the money to me, and I have to go back to sleep. Lao Chu asked David to transfer the money to him, but when David was about to leave, Lao Chu stopped David and said, this little brother, I wonder if I can go to Yaowang's mansion. Our mansion master wants to see you. After hearing this, David hesitated for a moment, then nodded and said, okay. David was also thinking about meeting the palace master of the Yaowang mansion. If he could have a good relationship, he might be able to get a lot of resources from the Yaowang mansion. David asked Wu Shi to go back by himself, and then followed Lao Chu to the Yaowangfu. In the hall of Yaowang mansion, Sun Simiao knew that the refiner of Xiaohuan Dan had been found, and he was very excited. If he could pull such a person into Yaowang mansion, or if he could know the refining method, it would be a great thing for Yaowang mansion. But when Lao Chu came with David, Sun Simiao's brows were slightly wrinkled. He originally wanted to be able to refine medicine pills like Xiaohuan Dan, but he was an old man who had been proficient in alchemy for many years, but he didn't want to be in his early 20s. Young people. Palace master, someone brought it. Lao Chu said to Sun Simiao. Sun Simiao nodded, looked at David and said, you really made Xiao Huan Dan. With doubts in Sun Simiao's eyes, he didn't quite believe David. After all, there are many people who want to be listed on the Medicine Palace, and there are some liars among them. If you don't believe me, I can go. David's face was dull, he turned around and left. David's reaction made Sun Simiao a little confused, and after a moment of stunned, he hurriedly stood up to stop David. Little brother, don't take offense, this old man has never seen such a young alchemist, so he is a bit reckless. Please sit down. David didn't really want to leave. After Sun Simiao apologized, he sat down. Sun Simiao waved at Lao Chui, go and pour tea. After speaking, he looked at David with a smile on his face and said, I don't know what the little brother is called. David. David said lightly. But when David said the word, Sun Simiao was stunned, and even the old Chu who was about to pour tea stopped and looked at David in disbelief. Could it be that the little brother is the one who killed Zhang Zhengzhong? Sun Simiao asked incredulously. It's me. David was not surprised that Sun Simiao knew about this. It has been a while since Zhang Zhengzhong was beheaded. It would be a bit strange if the Yao Wangfu had not received any news yet. Ha ha ha, it really is a hero. Sun Simiao laughed loudly. Have you received all the medicinal materials that Yaowang Mansion and Brother Chen traded some time ago? Make friends, little brother. Palace Master Sun, you sent someone to bring me, wouldn't you just be a friend? David smiled lightly and looked directly at Sun Simiao. Sun Simiao chuckled. Little brother, since you ask that, then I'll tell the truth. I want the little brother's pill recipe, and if the little brother doesn't dislike it, I want to invite the little brother to join my Yao Wangfu, as long as the little brother joins my Yao Wangfu, not to mention the entire Zhongbei, even the entire Daxia, no one dares to trouble the little brother. Of course, if the little brother has any requirements, feel free to mention them. As long as I can meet them, I will definitely meet the requirements of the little brother. David smiled. A medicine king's mansion would dare to say such arrogant words. One must know that the entire Daxia has a population of more than 1 billion and so many talents. What can a medicine king's mansion count? However, David did not refute, but looked at the back of the hall with his eyes. Palace Master Sun, I'd better follow the person who can make the call. I told you, I'm afraid you can't make the call. Chapter 437. Sun Simiao was stunned for a moment. Seeing David's eyes looking towards the back of the hall, he suddenly looked embarrassed. Brother Chen is indeed a young talent. If he can join the Yao Wangfu, he will definitely be even more powerful. Not long after David finished speaking, Bai Zontang stepped out from behind. Seeing Bai Zontang coming out, Sun Simiao hurriedly stood up to make way for Bai Zontang, and shouted respectfully, Second young master. Bai Zontang sat directly opposite David and smiled lightly. Introduce myself, I'm Bai Zontang from the Bai family in Kyoto, and it's like meeting Brother Chen today. David sneered, as soon as we meet, you won't hide behind and dare not show up. As soon as David entered the hall, he felt that someone was hiding behind him, and judging by his breath, his strength had reached the level of an internal force master. Bai Zontang smiled awkwardly. Brother Chen, I don't show up, actually. David waved his hand and interrupted Bai Zontang. You don't need to explain it to me, I'm not interested in listening. The reason why I came is because the Yao Wangfu has the medicinal materials I want. I will not join the Yao Wangfu, and Xiao Huan Dandan I can give you the recipe, but if you get the pill recipe, you can't make it, and if you want a small repayment pill, then use the herbs to exchange it. Bai Zontang frowned slightly when he saw David's resolute statement. In his opinion, when he showed his identity, David would be ecstatic to join the Yaowang Mansion. You must know the name of the Bai family in Kyoto. Everyone knows the truth of enjoying the cool, but David doesn't care at all. Brother Chen, I know you have caused some trouble recently. You killed Zhang Zhengzhong. He also has a younger brother, Zhang Zheng, in Kyoto. Although the two brothers are not on good terms, they are brothers after all. Then Zhang Zheng will definitely seek revenge on you. There is also Xuanyu Valley. I have already found out that the 4 elders of Xuanyu Valley have already left, and they are also coming to Zhongbei. If you join the Yaowang Mansion and have my Bai family shelter, I can help you solve all these troubles. Bai Zontang's eyes narrowed slightly as he stared at David and said, I will handle these things myself, the big deal is to kill one by one, and one pair to one pair. David's tone was low, but in Bai Zontang's ears, he was extremely proud. Bai Zontang smiled coldly. I don't know if Brother Chen has heard a sentence, it's raining when the sky is crazy, and disaster when people are crazy. If you think I'm arrogant, then don't talk about it. After David finished speaking, he got up and left. Brother Chen, stay, I want the pill recipe in your hand to return the pill, and you can ask for a price. Bai Zhantang saw that David was unwilling to join the Yaowang mansion, so he could only settle for the next best thing, and get the pill recipe first. As I said, it's useless to give you pill recipes, you can't refine them. David said. Little brother, there are many alchemy masters in my Yaowangfu, so there is no medicinal pill that cannot be refined. If you say so, do you have no medicinal formula at all? Seeing that David always belittled Yaowangfu, Sun Simiao said with a gloomy expression. Since you insist on the pill recipe, I can give it to you in exchange for half of the medicinal materials in the Medicine King's mansion. David said lightly. When Bai Zhantang and Sun Simiao heard it, they were stunned for a moment, and then Sun Simiao said angrily, do you know how many medicinal materials I have in the Yaowang mansion? It's halfway to open your mouth, it's like a lion's mouth. Bai Zhantang also frowned. Although your Xiao Huan Dan has a good effect and a low cost, but just because of these, you need half of the medicinal materials in my Yaowangfu, which is a bit overestimating yourself, right? What if you add this medicinal pill to it? As David said, he took out a turquoise medicinal pill from his arms and threw it at Bai Zhantang. Bai Zhantang reached out to pick it up. When the medicinal pill was in hand, a faint fragrance wafted into his nostrils. Chapter 438. After Sun Simiao saw the medicinal pill, his pupils shrank immediately, and his eyes showed horror. This is the great returning pill. Compared with the small returning pill, the effect is stronger. The main reason is that the great returning pill can greatly increase the martial artist's inner strength, improve his cultivation, and repair dark wounds. As soon as David's voice fell, Bai Zhantang and Sun Simiao were shocked. This great returning pill is a medicinal pill that David refined for Kai Feng and Lin Tianyu, and David kept one with him. You also refined this medicinal pill? Bai Zhantang looked at David and asked. If you don't believe it, then there is no need for us to talk. David waved his hand, and the medicinal pill returned directly to David. Brother Chen, how about my Bai family willing to spend 10 billion to buy your pill recipe? In addition, I can promise to help you settle that Zhongjung and Xuaniweigu. Bai Zhantang got up and said. As I said, I will handle my own affairs. If you want a pill, then replace it with herbs. David shook his head. Bai Zhantang frowned. Half of the medicinal materials in the Yaowang mansion are not something he can call the shots. In order to allow these precious medicinal ingredients to pass through the hands of the Yaowang mansion, the Bai family has also tried their best. You must know that these precious medicinal ingredients are not inexorable. All I could do was to use one less, and now I give half of it to David. Bai Zhantang is reluctant to bear it. Seeing that Bai Zhantang was silent, David turned around and left, but just after taking 2 steps, a few people suddenly poured in outside and directly surrounded David. It can be seen that these people should have been in ambush outside the hall for a long time, waiting for an opportunity. If David agreed to the request, these people would not come in. David's face turned cold, and he looked at Bai Zhantang. What does this mean? Little brother, the person who knows the current affairs is Junji, no one can refuse my Yaowangfu, leave the pill recipe, you can go. Bai Zhantang didn't speak, while Sun Simiao said coldly. Are you guys robbing me? David sneered. No matter what you say, keep Dan Fang, otherwise. Otherwise what? David narrowed his eyes slightly, and a cold light shot out from his eyes. Seeing David like this, Sun Simiao trembled involuntarily, but after glancing at Bai Zhantang, who had not spoken, he said fiercely, otherwise, you will disappear forever. It's just you. David suddenly smiled, his smile full of disdain. I changed my mind, just relying on your threat to me. Send all the medicinal materials of the Yaowang mansion to my house, otherwise I will let you Yaowang mansion. The whole door is destroyed. David was trying to find an excuse to get the medicinal materials from the Medicine King's mansion, but he didn't expect that Sun Simiao would even dare to threaten David. Ha ha ha, boy, are you out of your mind? Even if you can kill Zhongjung, do you really think you are invincible in the world? You still want to destroy my medicine palace? Sun Simiao laughed loudly, while Bai Zhantang's face was gloomy and he didn't say a word. David snorted coldly, didn't say anything else, and walked directly outside. Stop him. Sun Simiao gave an order, and the few people surrounding David rushed towards David together. David kept walking, and a monstrous force rose up from his body, like a huge flood and beast, and directly knocked out the few people who rushed towards him. Seeing this, Sun Simiao looked furious. Good boy, let me meet you. Stop. Bai Zhantang said. Sun Simiao stopped and could only watch David leave. Second young master. Sun Simiao looked at Bai Zhantang with a puzzled expression. Leave him alone, it's not too late to clean him up after the martial arts gathering, we still have more important things to do. After Bai Zontang finished speaking, he turned and walked towards the back hall. Chapter 439. In front of the hotel, Wu Shi was walking back and forth anxiously. Seeing David coming back, Wu Shi hurriedly greeted him. Mr. Chen, are you all right? It's okay, what's wrong? David looked at Wu Shi with a puzzled face and asked. It's fine. Wu Shi let out a long sigh of relief. The palace master of Yao Wang's mansion is extremely domineering. I'm afraid that Mr. Chen will run into trouble if he goes. When David heard this, he smiled lightly. No one can trouble me, go to sleep. After finishing speaking, David took out the big return pill and threw it to Wu Shi and said, You have eaten this pill, and at this martial arts gathering, you are very hopeful to win the championship. Wu Shi looked at the medicine pill and didn't care too much, but asked in surprise, Don't Mr. Chen plan to participate? I heard that the championship reward this time is a 100-year-old medicinal herb. David shook his head. If you don't participate, I have to give you some hope. Originally David planned to participate, but now he is interested in the medicinal materials of the entire Yaowangfu, a mere 100-year-old medicinal material, so David doesn't care. Excitement flashed across Wu Zai's face. Thank you, Mr. Chen, for your completeness. Wu Shi thought that David did this to give him the championship position. Just when David was about to go back to the hotel, someone suddenly shouted from behind, David. David turned his head suddenly, and frowned slightly. Why did you come here? Didn't you say that you won't be allowed to come? It was Sonia and Ji Yulinger who came, and Lin Tianyu was behind carrying bags for the two of them. Mr. Chen, I'm sorry, Miss Su and the others have to come, I can't stop it. Lin Tianyu said helplessly. It doesn't matter about you. Sonia said, looking at David and saying, We are too boring in the provincial capital, so what's wrong with coming here to play for a few days? You are not here to find a girl behind my back, right? When Sonia said this, David was speechless for a while. I'm afraid that it's too dangerous for you to come here, and the hotel here is tense. I'm afraid you don't even have a place to live. Don't worry, I have already found a good hotel. Although my ancient family is not as good as before, I still have the ability to book a hotel in the township below. Ji Yulinger said. David had nothing to say, but what Ji Yulinger said was right. With the ability of the Ji Yu family in the provincial capital, it was really not a problem to book a hotel. How could Ji Yulinger's parents also be officials in the provincial capital? After helping Sonia and Ji Yulinger settle down, David went to rest. Originally, the two girls were planning to go shopping at night, but David stopped them. In the evening, David really didn't want to hang out with them. Now, and there are warriors everywhere, all of them are rude, David doesn't want to cause unnecessary trouble. In the middle of the night, David, who was sleeping soundly, was suddenly awakened by the sound of rapid footsteps on the street. He hurriedly got up and looked through the window. He found that a girl was running desperately, and several people were chasing behind. These people tacitly did not speak out, but just ran desperately. Seeing this scene, David planned to go back to sleep again. No matter what conflicts or festivals the other party had, he did not care about his business. David was not the savior, nor did he want to be the savior. But just when David was about to lie down again to sleep, he suddenly felt a vague aura coming from the girl's body, and he felt very familiar with this aura, as if he was holding his own at that time. I feel the same when the jade pendant my mother left behind. David opened the window, jumped down, and followed closely behind. Soon, the girl was blocked in an alley, holding something in both hands, and then looked at the few people who were chasing her in horror. Chapter 440. David hid in the dark. When he saw the girl's appearance, he was suddenly surprised. This girl was actually the girl Qin Feng gave to Ji Yulinger's parents in the photo. Among the few people chasing after the girl, David also found a familiar figure, that is Bai Zontang, who had just met. Yin Susu, give me the things, I can spare your father and daughter, and I can let the Yaowangfu do its best to cure your father's illness. Bai Zontang walked towards the girl and said lightly. Bai Zontang, don't come here, or I'll break the jade pendant. The girl raised the thing in her hand and stared at Bai Zontang. When Bai Zontang heard this, he really stopped, with a nervous expression on his face. If you have something to say, I can promise you anything you want. Bah, I won't believe you. You ruined my Yin family's family, and you still want to get my ancestral jade pendant. I won't let you succeed. Yin Susu roared with anger in her eyes. You think about your seriously ill father, didn't you come here to ask Yaowangfu to save your father? I can order them to heal your father now. As Bai Zontang spoke, his feet were slowly moving. I want to know that Yao Wangfu is the puppet of your Bai family, so I won't come. I'd rather die than give things to you. Yin Susu's eyes were full of firmness, and she said with a deadly expression. Bai Zantang frowned, but still calmly said, you misunderstood me, it was the Qin family who destroyed your Yin family, not us at all, that's why I let my sister dump that Qin Feng, you should it's right to hate the Qin family. Are all of your Bai family so shameless? Just as Bai Zantang's voice fell, a few more people suddenly walked in from the alley. The leader is that Qin Feng, and there are several masters behind him. Qin Feng. Why did you come here? After Bai Zantang saw Qin Feng, he frowned in surprise. Do you think only your Bai family can guess that she will come here? Qin Feng smiled coldly. Qin Feng, you'd better leave now. Don't forget whose territory is here. You must know that the Yaowang mansion is the property of my Bai family. If you want to compete with me here, do you have the qualifications? Bai Zantang threatened Qin Feng. Are you threatening me? I'm not afraid. Do you think my Qin family has nothing in Zhongbei? As Qin Feng's voice fell, a middle-aged man with a square face and thick eyebrows and big eyes walked out. David found that the appearance of this middle-aged man was somewhat similar to that of Zhang Zhengzhong. Zhang Zheng. Bai Zantang looked a little surprised when he saw the person coming. David, who was hiding in the dark, realized that this person was Zhang Zhengzhong's younger brother Zhang Zheng. No wonder he looked a little like him. Master Qin. Zhang Zheng walked towards Qin Feng and shouted respectfully. Qin Feng looked at Bai Zantang with a proud face. Now Zhang Zheng has become my Qin family guest. Ha ha ha, Qin Feng, what are you proud of? Don't you know the news that the Zhang family has long been wiped out? It's just Zhang Zheng, and my Bai family doesn't even care about it. Bai Zantang laughed. Of course I know, but Bai Zantang, open your eyes and take a look. Based on the current strength comparison, if I want to take that jade pendant, can you stop me? Qin Feng sneered. Bai Zantang's smile suddenly solidified on his face. Although the number of people on both sides is similar, it is obvious that Qin Feng's strength is stronger. Just when the two sides confronted each other, David quietly went behind Yin Susu. Yin Susu felt someone approaching her and wanted to shout when she opened her mouth, but before she could shout, David covered her mouth, then jumped up, jumped over the high wall and disappeared.